Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Nero Experience. I'm your host, Emperor Nero, and today we're going to be doing something slightly different. Usually, in every episode, I get to interview a guest and we talk about a specific topic, mainly their own story. But today, I'm going to talk about a very exciting story, which is my story. It's a story of when I worked on Jetseta.com, which was a startup I helped co-found. It was a private jet marketplace, which a startup which I helped to start, like an Uber for private jets out of Nigeria. I worked on this between 2016 and 2020. And so, today I'll be talking about that story. Yeah, we'll talk about venture, we'll talk about entrepreneurship, I'll be talking about Africa, I'll be talking about highs and the lows and the journey and the learning. So grab your coffee and get comfortable and let's go. Okay, so it was the year October 2015. I had just moved back from Nigeria after university. A few months before, I was working on a startup idea that kind of fell through, didn't work out. This was straight out of university. And I was like, I'm not doing a startup again. And then it was December. In December, I went to the capital of Nigeria, Abuja, to visit my brother, Harold. And then he told me, he knew I just worked on a project. And he was like, hey, I have this other project. Are you interested? Do you want to do it? And I previously, after working on another project, said, hey, I'm not doing a startup again. But when he made this proposal, it sounded interesting and a new challenge. Exactly a few months later, I'd signed up myself for my next startup, which was Jetseta. Now, when I got introduced to the project, it was a proposal. It was mainly, he had started it with a silent partner, and there was staff at the office who was working on like the admin. So it was just, here's the proposal, here's the idea, run with it. So that was it. That was all I was given. So what I first did, really got things going January 2016. So the main thing I just did once I got the proposal is to just look at the initial research or business plan and kind of understand, hey, what's the concept, what's the problem? Now, on the surface, you would think, hey, this is like a luxury proposition. But when I did my initial research at the time, I found out it was more than that. At the time, flying domestically within Nigeria, there was a lot of delays and cancelled flights. So for a 1 hour flight from the capital, Lagos, from Abuja to Lagos was about a 1 hour flight. You could find yourself waiting for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. So when you're a business executive who has to travel to Abuja to get permits, who needs to, go to several meetings in different cities, that can be quite tasking, can cost you a lot. So I think that was the first insight for me that, hey, this is not just a luxury proposition. And maybe on the supplier side, why there was the opportunity was because in the previous years, prior to 2014, when there was global high oil price, a lot of oil companies and executives had bought private jets. And now that it was no longer boom time, to maintain those private jets, whether you use them or not, was like $1 million. So there was always that they had to maintain it, but they were not flying enough. So it was just really like a cost center. So the idea then, when I looked at the initial plan or the initial problem and then looked at this proposition, it was like, hey, how can we offset some of that? And the proposition then was to do something where we develop a mobile app. And with this mobile app, users would be able to book. But unlike the global industry where basically you're paying for a private jet, in global industry, if you're getting a private jet, you're paying for the jet to go somewhere and for it to come back. You're paying for the round trip, just one person. So that can be quite pricey. So the value proposition or the hypothesis was, can we do something where individual users can pay for a seat on a route? So if you're going from Lagos to Abuja in Nigeria or Abuja to Lagos or Lagos to Ghana, can you do something where someone can book on a seat on that route, on a popular route? That was the initial proposition. And then based on my initial research, based on speaking to the co-founders, my brother, we then did a PowerPoint presentation, which was like our MVP. So we used that PowerPoint presentation on this is Jetseta, this is what we want to do, this is what the app will be able to do, and kept on doing lots of presentations in Abuja. It was like a low-cost way. From doing those presentations, I got a lot of insights that this will work, this will not work, this is the cultural nuances, So it was fascinating. I had all kinds of feedback. So for example, because in Nigeria, there's a lot of business going on and people could owe people money. Someone once said, now you want to put everybody to fly single seat. What if someone gets on a flight and they're on the same flight with someone they owe money? So these were like interesting nuances I hadn't thought about. From that, we got a lot of feedback. And from there, we started working on the app. Now, the next step after we did that was to quickly do LinkedIn page, and coincidentally, that was around the time they were having the conference in Nigeria for the industry, Nigeria Business Aviation Conference. So we quickly, after doing the app, after doing the MVP with the PowerPoint, we then went to this I and my other colleague, Valerie, who joined, we then went to this conference in Lagos on the Nigerian business aviation industry. Now, why it was so important to go to that conference was that was where most of the players and the operators were going to be. Now, because we were planning to operate like a two-sided marketplace where we would not own the jets, but we'll basically be able to connect the people who own and operate the jets with the potential customers. That was like the value prop. So we went to this conference in Lagos, and we got to meet a lot of the operators. And the idea or the success factor was, hey, let's sign up an operator and get them on this platform. Let's go for the supply side. And it was good in terms of we got to see all the presentations of the industry, the state, what's going on. And then we were able to sign up one operator and another one tentative, and later we signed him up. But I think maybe the best thing for me was the feedback. From speaking to the operators, you start hearing what's the problem for them, bringing the right number of customers. So for example, I knew for a lot of them, single seats, they felt it reduces the value, and how would that work, and would they get paid? And it's like, no. Before the flight goes, you're getting a few people. So instead of one person taking a plane and paying $10,000 for a flight, it would be an individual getting a seat for $500 to $1,000. So that was it. So just doing that, we got to sign up an operator and then get some insights on what's their concern. So from seeing the operators, meeting the operators, from doing the business plan, the next thing I then did was a kind of competitor research where I looked at globally what are the apps that are out there for private jets and how do they work. So NetJet, StrataJet, Private Fly, which was in the UK. So because of that, I had a rough idea on what the current apps do, what their features look like. And using all those insights, I was able to then write what you call a PRD, a product requirement document, that this is the kind of features we're going to build. And then working with a development team and a software engineer, we were able to start developing the product. Now, while that was in the process of the app was being built, the next stage was really around marketing, because we knew we needed some kind of marketing material, not just for our website, but also materials for where we go and pitch to prospective customers. So in the last episode, I talked about this, like doing a photo shoot, but I'll give a brief summary. So when we went to do the marketing, the next thing was we planned it. I and Valerie planned like, hey, these are the campaigns we want to do. We want to do a campaign with a family shoot. We want to do a campaign with a group of girls going to Lagos, like showing people going to party on a Friday evening, and then do a campaign with a couple going on the honeymoon, and then do one around the music artist going for a concert. So that was it. Came up with a plan to do this photo shoot, shared the plan, got the models for the photo shoot, like people who will participate, got all the logistics, all the permits sorted. And then the day before the photo shoot, I think it was around 10 p.m. before the photo shoot, I was presenting my budget to the other co-founder, the selling co-founder and investor. And he was like, hey, this is too much. You need to cut this budget down by half or something like that. So in the back and forth, and even my back and forth with the photographer canceled. I said, hey, she can't do it with this budget. So at 10 p.m., we had to start looking for another photographer. Luckily for me, Harold, my brother, who brought me into the project, he was able to find someone, and that was how we were able to get back on schedule. So the next morning, we started off, went to the airport, the private jet terminal in the capital of Abuja to do this photo shoot. Most of the people came late, but we just made do, got set up. We had like a staging office and close to the airport. With one of our partner operators. And it was from there, everyone could stop. We had a makeup artist for everyone to do their makeups and touch up. So at the ending, we did the photo shoot, and it generally was a success. I think for me, it was just seeing it eventually come together and seeing everybody take the pictures. So we did all of that, finished that day, I think around 10 p.m., got the pictures, and then we used the pictures, not just on our website, we're able to then use it for our branding, use it to do a cover photo, use it to do a company profile about us, this is who we are. And then once all of that was done, we could then start, and this was all done in preparation to the app coming out, and then we could start using the material, the cover photo, company profile, and a welcome letter to send to different companies. So eventually, After a few months, I think it was like 9 months, 8 months, the app was out. Finally, it had come out. It was in the market. We're excited. Woohoo. And then we released the app and then silence, like just nothing. There's always this assumption that when you build an app or a product, once you put it out, if you build it, they'll come, the famous statement. But yeah, it was radio silence. And I think for me, the big lesson there or then was that the real work starts after you release. Like that's where you then go and sell. That's where you do your marketing. That's when you refine your message. So yeah, that was the key thing for me. Like, hey, we've released. What do we do now? So we were thinking. I was reaching out to people, but I realized that okay, it's quite challenging or a high expectation to expect people to see a new company and then just go and start using the product. So I realized the first thing was, hey, instead of just trying to market to everyone who travels, I need to kind of niche down. And the niche down was to find prospective customers, like my target market. And my target market, I realized, was not anyone. It was people who are either have used a private jet before, so they know the value, or business executives, CEO, C-suite, who needed to go to different places, people who could afford it, but their time, and they want to be waiting in the airport for a few hours. So that kind of like narrowed my niche. And then at some point I was like, oh, I was stuck, didn't know what to do. So I decided to take a break and I went on holiday to London. And while I was on holiday, speaking to people, to friends, I had an idea that, hey, maybe we can do almost like an MVP kind of flight. And the flight was basically, or two things. We can do maybe a low cost way to show what the flight could be. And then secondly, we should open an office in Lagos, get a space in Lagos. So we're able to do it in terms of, we then partnered with this, the famous operator for oil and gas flights and helicopters in Nigeria, and also globally, Bristol Helicopters. And the idea was, what if we get a plane, which is like a normal airliner plane, a 50-seater regional plane, and use it to do flights, but passengers will be able to travel through private jet terminals, so they will not need to queue. They will basically be able to come out of their car and like 15 minutes they boarded the flight and the flight has left. So passengers will have a feel for what the experience would be. And then for our own passengers, they would be able to book the app. So at the time, this was a rough idea. Went back to Lagos, reached out to Bristol, got connected through my network, and coincidentally, they were thinking the same thing or the same kind of service. They were already doing that service from Lagos to Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt is like the oil and gas production hub in Nigeria. So the idea was like, okay, we could kind of leverage the same service because they had a spare plane, and can we also do it from the capital, Lagos to Abuja? Because the most popular routes then, and I think now in Nigeria, were still Lagos, the capital, Abuja, and Port Harcourt, where oil and gas activity goes to. So that was what we did. That's what we did, and it started working. That was a service. It was obviously cheaper. So before, when we were going to offer a service where users would be paying, we're paying up to $1,000, right? Now, now they'll be paying like 80,000 naira for a seat, which is like $250. So it's kind of like a cheaper alternative or a cheaper way to test it and to build credibility and to build trust. So that was the first thing. And then secondly, we opened the office in Lagos. So I was still thinking, okay, how do I get these target customers? Long story short, I decided to go to the best place I know, which was the famous golf club in Lagos, Ikoyi Golf Club, also the oldest, I believe. And so I went there, got in through one of my contacts, it was quite exclusive, and wore my Jetseta shirt, and just went there, started meeting all these executives, CEOs of banks, went there with my business card and my shirt, like, hey, this is what I do, hey, this is what I do, this is my company, we can do this and this, just no fear. But while doing that, I found out they had this another exclusive tournament they do once a year, a charity golf tournament in Ogun State, which is Aviator, which is like, I think about a 2 hours drive from Lagos. And I should come, I'd be able to meet more people. So that's how I signed myself up, hired a car and a driver. I went to Aviator on the weekend for this tournament. And then I followed one of my contacts that had connected me with, my mentor had connected me with someone. So I followed him and his company of friends as they were going from hole to hole on the golf course, just meeting them, talking to them, telling them what I'm doing. So afterwards, at the end, when everybody was having lunch or dinner, lunch, and all these senior executives and the security, and I remember just like mustering up the courage to just go talk to each person and say, hey, this is what I do, this is what I do. And then at some point, you're like, wow, okay, you've given people a card, they've shown some kind of interest. It's like, okay, let's call it a day. Let me head back, And then something just said, keep going, keep going, keep going, just keep going. So finally, I spoke to one gentleman, and he knew about the service, or he had heard about it, because he used to use the oil and gas service to Port Harcourt, his company. And then he was like, yeah, I'll try Unero. Long story short, he ended up trying the service and using the service another 10 times and introducing me to my 4 other clients, initial clients, and eventually 6 people, and my first client to do the full private jet. So 2 things. So one, I think for me, that was the big learning there was just around designing for trust, have a kind of MVP way to test what you say you want to do. And then what I then started seeing is users will use this cheaper service provided by Bristol, 70,000 naira, about $250. They'll use it. And then when there's somewhere they need to go to, either within Nigeria or West Africa, and there's no flights, then they'll say, hey, I need to go to this place in Mina, or this place in Adamawa, or this place, in Kwara, and there's no direct flights. Can you organize a private jet? So literally, that was how we got started. That's how we did the service, and that's how I did my first set of flights. Now, that low-cost service organized by Bristol ended up being a good cash flow. So like regularly, you can pay bills, and pay a salary, and then the private jet ended up being the one that we could actually build after building a lot of trust with our customers. So yeah, that was it. The second aspect of it was just for me. I just come back. We gradually added other members to the team, and it was just me trying to, first time ever out of university, try to lead a small team. And I was probably like the youngest person on the team, I think. So there was kind of like cultural nuances to it. And the idea was like, hey, how do you lead? So I think for me, it was just lead by example. Just throw yourself into the deep end. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. So for example, some things I tried to do was, because I knew we had a sister company that did real estate, focused on the capital. And so they had their own core staff that we're using, and we were basically using their office space. And something I then introduced on Fridays to kind of get us to bond and to learn more and to be gingered about sales was, actually to introduce Monopoly, where I came up with Monopoly Fridays, where we could where we go and buy pizza and Monopoly, but we'll all play Monopoly and compete, and everyone will get the feeling of sales and the feeling of winning. So that was a good thing. And then for my team, which we were doing the private jet, it was me, Valerie, and one other person who had joined. And the idea was like, okay, what do we do? How do we kind of organize ourselves? So what I then did was I came up with like a timetable just to say like, hey, this is what we'll be doing every day. We're going to make these leads, call those people. After that, we'll go to the airport on Wednesday afternoon, Friday afternoon to kind of meet our partners, operators. And then we'll do a lot of like outgoing marketing and writing and posting. And yeah, and that was how we got started and got the ball rolling. Okay, so maybe another really interesting aspect or challenge while I was doing this experience was so now we started the Bristol service. It was going on. We're a team of about 3 people. And then March 2017, the Federal Ministry of Aviation in Nigeria decided to close the Abuja airport so that they could repair the runway. They had a runway with like potholes or something had happened that damaged. So they were closing it for 6 weeks. Which is just like disruption because nobody could fly then. Businesses, companies, everyone in Lagos, in the capital Abuja would be affected. But not just that, almost everyone in Nigeria, because if you're a business person, and let's say you're working like the oil and gas industry, for example, which is big, any permit or anything you need, you kind of need to go to the capital Abuja to get the permit you need. So if it's closed, it then becomes almost impossible. And so while they're going to close it, they were then proposing that everyone goes to the closest place, Kaduna State, which is in the north, which is like 200 kilometers from Abuja. So go there and then take a bus with government security down into Abuja. So 1, it was quite far. 2, there was a lot of people were concerned about security. And then that road is like just a single straight road. So everyone was concerned. So I remember at this point, because of after my prior marketing and campaign and going to the golf tournament, I had started taking off golf lessons. So I was once on the course with one of my clients and he kept on asking that, hey, Nero, they're going to close this airport. We still need to go to Abuja for meetings. What are you going to do? And I remember thinking for like 5 seconds and I just said, yeah, we're going to do helicopters. And I think he had told me how yeah, but I don't know if unfiltered helicopters are very fragile. So he was quite skeptical. So to kind of know what we're getting into or what could be the options, I then decided to take that trip myself. I and the team and my brother, we took the trip from Abuja to Kaduna. I think it took about 3 hours. Took the long trip, got to Kaduna airport. I noticed it was kind of like a traditional old airport, and they were trying to fix it up and repaint it. So met one of our partners there who had a few planes that were based there. So while we're there, I got to hear about it and see the airport. So just seeing it, I also saw they hadn't fixed up everything properly. But yeah, just seeing it, I realized that, okay, this is going to be tricky because just security-wise, a lot of the standard business clients or expatriates based in Lagos, they may not feel, this may not pass their security test or safety test, going there, how do they get out? So yeah, I was like, okay, we need to come up with another option if this is not going to be an option. But while I was there, I got to make the best opportunity of being there. I did a lot of plane spotting. So there were a lot of there were a few airlines that I started 25 years ago that were based out of there, like Sky Power. So I got to see some older aircrafts, Embraer, Banderate, Dornier Aviation Nigeria, which had the Dornier 228 turboprop planes. So that was just good. And I remember us driving back to Abuja and just thinking, hey, what's going to be the solution? What's going to be the solution? So we then started speaking to our partner, Bristol, and we found out they had done their own assessment and said, hey, instead of going to Kaduna, we can actually go to Mina, which is about 20 minutes closer to Abuja. But we could go to Mina International Airport and then use a helicopter that is based there to fly into Abuja. So that was kind of like the solution. So we had kind of thought about it. So they made all the arrangements. We knew, okay, this was kind of going to be the continuity of the service. And at the ending, they got the helicopter there to Abuja, and then the NSA director for Nigeria says, hey, this is a security threat, helicopters in the capital, we're banning all helicopters. So mind you, I think this was a week. So the closure of the airport was for 6 weeks. This was like a week into it. So that was his initial ban, and they had already invested money, put the helicopters there. So everybody was kind of stuck. So the ban was for a week and a half, and I think he finally lifted it after almost about, let's call it 2 weeks. So we had like 3 weeks left. So finally lifted it, thank God, and then we started the service. Now, what was interesting was we started the service, and users from Lagos would then fly to Mina, take this helicopter into Abuja. But what I found interesting was a lot of the users or passengers who had said, hey, I will never use helicopters, it's too fragile. They started using it and they loved it. They will get on the helicopter, they'll take selfie, they'll say how they enjoyed it. So I think maybe for me, the big thing about the whole experience, if I was to summarize my own learning, was one, the first thing around scenario planning, that when you're in entrepreneurship and in an emerging market, you have to prepare for different scenarios. This is my scenario one, where I expect everything to work out, and then my plan A, plan B, plan C. So I think that was a good one. Another one I learned was just having really good, reliable partners. Like working with Bristol, who are very experienced, and especially from a safety point of view, from oil and gas industry, and who had the required resources. That was helpful. I think maybe the third lesson for me was just being able to come up with a solution to a big problem in Nigeria. Just give me that confidence that, hey, we can actually solve big problems. We can actually say, hey, this is a big problem, nobody knows what to do. Instead of saying, hey, we can't do anything, we can actually sit down and come up with something unique. So that was like motivating. And maybe the last lesson I learned throughout that experience was just to have fun. A lot of times for your work, for your business, you can be like, hey, there's no options. I actually don't know what to do. But I think just coming up with a solution, but also just having fun. Have fun problem solving. Also having fun problem solving. Like, hey, this is the solution. I'm going to try this solution. I'm going to do this and see what works. So I think for me, it was rewarding for that 6 weeks period. Thank God, I think 2 weeks later, so after the 6 weeks, they had opened the airport with a brand new resurfaced runway. So yeah, everything worked out. And maybe the last thing I would say is just really about giving your customers great customer service, not just customer service, customer experience, and really communicating so that when things change, it's like, hey, I want the best for you. This is the solutions available, and there's a kind of like co-creating the experience. So I think I found a lot of my clients like that, like saying, hey, this is the option. We can go what the the government, like go to Kaduna and take a long ride, or we can go to Niger. So that was kind of like a good experience, just really partnering with your customers as well, and delivering a great experience. So yeah, that was my lesson. That was my experience during the Abuja airport closure. Okay, so that was it. That was the adventure of the Abuja airport closure, and like just a new challenge. I think for me, then came probably the biggest challenge was COVID. So it was 2019, 2020, and then COVID had happened. We all know what happened with COVID and where you were during COVID. And the airport was closed in Nigeria, the airspace was closed, and globally, everywhere was closed. You couldn't go anywhere. But we had customers in Nigeria who go every month to London for their health checkup, who had a health condition. So they needed to still go to London. And then there were a lot of some of those customers who their children who were students were stuck in London and needed to come back to Lagos, and there were no flights, no scheduled flights. Everything was closed. So a few of them had asked, hey, can we do something about this? Or are there any options? So what I and the team did was we then came up with a solution where we contracted with an operator based in London, so a London certified plane private operator. And we got them to get this Airbus A318. So usually it has about 110 to 130 seats, but this configuration had 32 business class seats that lie flat. Now, why that was good was obviously because of COVID restrictions, so that people can kind of isolate. And so we did that, and then to actually make it work, we then had to write to the Ministry of Aviation, say, hey, we need to do this flight, to get all the permits that we needed, and also to say, hey, we'll be COVID compliant. All the passengers will take a COVID test before and after the flight. And luckily for us, we got the permit to do the flight, and so we did the flight, and it was quite successful. So we're able to do it to Stansted Airport in London using the private jet wing in-flight center. So we did it. Now, I actually got to test out that flight myself during COVID, so traveled through the international airport in Lagos, Murtala Mohammed. And for the first time in my life, one of the busiest airports, Murtala Mohammed, busiest airports in Africa, was closed. And they had just opened the airport just at that slot in the afternoon for our flight. So got in and everywhere was closed, all the staff just for our flight. I think we had like 24 people going, or 24 to 20 people going each way. So we came in, went to Murtala Mohammed, did all the testing, and then boarded the flight. And yeah, it was amazing. Landed in London, and it was seamless. And after a few days, I took it back to come back. So that worked very well, and a lot of users loved it. Now, why? Two things. One thing I took away from that was I remember us getting like a really good feedback from one of the elderly passengers who was like, yeah, Jetseta did exceptionally well. The service was amazing. They really outdid themselves here. We left on time. We're COVID compliant, stuff like that. So for me, it was good. I think then the lessons for me was that just the way I was saying, hey, you can go after a hard problem, was like, hey, you can go after a global problem that no other person was flying, no other airlines were flying, but we could come up with a solution. And then maybe another lesson was just really think about the process end to end. And maybe also engage with your regulators early so that you can get the permits and there's no like delays. That was a big one for me. Just doing that flight and doing a few more of that same kind of flight. But I thought that was the biggest. And then another challenge opportunity. The Nigerian ministry and Nigerian government had reached out to us to say, hey, we have about 100 Nigerian students in Ukraine, stuck in Ukraine because of the airport. Can you basically organize and deliver a repatriation flight? And so this was just this was just left wing. It was something like, hey, where do we even get started with this? But so at the ending, this came from them, and they were the ones who had also got us started or got the permits and everything. So we're like, okay, since they're going to support with everything, let's do it. So the first thing we had to do was get the operator. So we're able to find an operator in Eastern Europe who could do the flight, had the big long range plane that could do the flight. The second thing was now how to the logistics of the students, because not everyone was in Kiev, in the capital. Most of the students were everywhere, they were in the northernmost part. So it was like, how do you get 100 students to be there at the right time and then you take it? So we organized to do that, also in partnership with the embassy in Kiev. Like, hey, we're going to do this flight, we've got all the permits, everything. Some side notes, an added challenge or opportunity was that they had tried to get the biggest airline in Nigeria to do it, but they couldn't do it for whatever their reasons were. So there was also the challenge of language barrier and different barriers and COVID and restrictions and different airspace. So at the ending, we said, yeah, we're going to do it, communicated through the embassy, came up with a plan. This is the route, this is the plane, did a PDF, all you should know about this flight. And when we were about to do it, and we contacted all the students started traveling to Kiev. And then there were some delays with the airline or issues, I think, with them getting the payment or confirmation. Again, language barrier. So they couldn't fly on that day. We had to then move it to, I think, the next weekend, a week inside. So all the students had traveled to Kiev, and now we're almost stuck. There was nowhere for them to go. So we then had to come up with solutions on the fly in partnership with the embassy. Like, I know one of it was to get accommodations for them immediately, and then reach out to a Nigerian caterer to provide food for all of them, jollof rice and water. So that was the first step, and then actually finalize the flight. Now, obviously, by the next morning, everyone was really upset, and parents were really on edge that what's happening with the children. So we then had a Zoom call. My brother led this Zoom call with the embassy, with the students, with everybody, just to say, sorry about this. This is what happened. Just to be as transparent, this was a problem. We've come up with an alternative, and the flight is going to be next Saturday. It's confirmed. There's no delays. There's no cancellations. Everything's all set. Two things. One, I could, because I was trying to like read the room. This was over Zoom, so it was kind of like the thing where, yeah, everyone was really, really upset, especially parents who were in Nigeria who were like worried that, oh, what's going to happen to our children? But just communicating helped. But something else I need to say is that I was really, 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 really impressed with the Nigerian embassy staff in Kiev, in Ukraine. And then also one of the persons who had helped being like the man on ground was a lady. She was a PhD student in Kiev. So she was like the point person on the WhatsApp group. So everybody could reach out to her and we could share information to her as well as everyone else. So that really helped with coordinating. So eventually the next weekend, a week later, we had the flight. Everybody bussed everybody from the accommodation to the airport, got in the airport and they boarded the flight. It was boarded this big flight, and then obviously you can track flights, so you could track it on its way to Africa. And I think it stopped at Chad to do some refueling, and then came and landed in capital Abuja. And I think for me, it was just the feeling of the parents, when you see the parents, everybody who were worried and seeing their children come and tears of joy. And then we quickly, because we had some students who were also going to Lagos. So the team who was in Abuja, I was in Lagos at this time. So the team who were in Abuja quickly got the passengers who were connecting to get on a domestic flight, another flight, to take them to Lagos. But I think for me, that moment was just huge, where it was like, wow, we did something. This felt like impact, not just doing something for profit. It was like real impact. I was so proud with the team. And it felt like all the work we had been doing over 5 years from when we started in 2016, this was 2020. Like everything had just compounded, dealing with the pressure, coming up with new solutions. And that's what it felt like. And I felt like for the first time that, hey, I've done my work here. I'm ready for a new adventure. But the big lessons that I took away was, one, you can solve a global problem. You can come up with a solution. Two, stuff changes and stuff comes up, especially in an environment like that, a unique environment, COVID. You just have to keep calm, breathe, and just think of solutions and just iterate. And then three, just the importance of communication, over-communication, transparency. And maybe four, really just relying on your team. I think it was very impressive to just see the whole team just rally and get everything done. Seeing all of that come together, that was incredible. And I just remember feeling like I feel like my work is done, and just seeing the amount of credibility we had built. And that was a success. Okay, so that was Yeah, those are the main stories of my experience trying to build this marketplace, Uber for private jets in Nigeria, in Lagos, starting out of Abuja and Lagos, and yeah, it was quite life changing. Got to do lots of flights within Nigeria, within West Africa, internationally. Did flights with turboprops, with jets, with scheduled flights, with helicopters. So it was a good experience. Got to start a team, build a team, open a new office in Lagos. I think if I take a step back and I say, hey, what did I learn? What were the challenges? What would I do differently? I think the main thing is just to keep making it, keep trying, keep learning. Obviously, it was a very regulated industry, aviation and travel, but it's almost focus on the problem, focus on the user, just get started and iterate from there. I think for me, there was also the thing of obviously competitors, like where if you come up with any innovation in Nigeria, people will copy it and copy it aggressively. So you have to almost remain innovative and keep building a brand to kind of like differentiate yourself. Another thing I think I would say is probably timing. Something I realized that is really important is like timing matters in terms of you want to go after the right problem with the right solution at the right time, because then when you do it, it kind of all aligns. And so it's kind of like when we had the solution for COVID international flights, it's all those experiences were built, we were able to do it. And then because we were doing it, we then had the opportunity when the Ukraine flight came up where we could say, hey, could we extend it to do this? It's a bigger plane, it's more passengers. So yeah, maybe that was it. Another thing, maybe a bit of a challenge was just people and the environment being resistant to change. I remember when we came up with the concept that, hey, you can book a seat on a jet to fly. And then everyone just said, no, nobody will use that. That's not how the industry is. You're chipping away the value of the product. And then when COVID happened and there were not enough flights or even planes in country, I then had calls from people who had said that would not work, that, hey, are you doing this flight? Can you get a single seat on your flight? So I think that is it where sometimes people are resistant to change until maybe there's a necessity to change, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was just some of my big challenges. Would I do it? Yeah, so that and timing. Maybe the last lesson I learned from those challenges is the importance of partners, but more specifically relationships. Everything is about relationships, people and relationships. People on your team, people on your suppliers, people in your partners, your customers, even your regulators, even your competitors. I think it's really about people and relationship and really engaging and showing interest, asking people about their lives, their family, and being genuinely interested. Everybody's going through life, and just being seen to care can go a long way, or just caring, not just seen to care. Would I do anything differently? Hindsight is 2020, but I don't think I'll do anything different. It was one of those ones where there's such a huge value of experience and building capacity, and I guess also credibility, because there's some things that you have in such a nuanced industry that you can't just read in a book. You just have to do it and go through it and learn from it. And you got to see a lot of changes. We got to see the exchange rate go in free fall, the cost of aviation fuel go up, scarcity of planes, COVID. But I think for me, it's just about really going through those highs and lows, but the importance of learning as you go. And that learning becomes experience, and that experience gives you capacity, and then just people, relationships. Those would be the key things I would say were the challenges, lessons learned, and if I'll do things differently from my experience doing Jetseta. And that's mainly it. Now, maybe before the final thing, or I conclude, yeah, I think one thing I'd just like to say is just thank you. Thank you to everyone I got involved with on this project. Thank you to my brother Harold Okwer for telling me about this proposal and inviting me to join this adventure. Thank you to our team, our partners, just everyone. It was such an incredible experience. It meant a lot for me. In my companion article to this, I talked about the 3 gifts I got from this experience. One of the gifts that I thought was like curiosity, but also confidence, like confidence that, hey, you can go out and do something. Another gift for me was actually product management, like learning about building products and app and how you bring that to market, how you build it, how you bring it to market, how you market it. And then 3 was just really also just learning about an industry I would care about, like aviation, airlines, travel, and also in that context of Africa. So even now, I'm still fascinated, like, hey, what's going on in Africa? What's going on in travel in Africa? And how does that work and how can it be improved? So yeah, just thank you again to everyone I got to work with. And maybe at this juncture, I'd like to remember my former colleague and friend, Valerie Efik, who I worked with. She was the first person on the team. So for that first year, we worked together. It was just 2 of us doing everything. I recently heard about 2 months ago, she passed on. She was ill. And I just want to say thank you to her as well for the incredible work, for the support, and for making the experience bearable when it was really challenging in that first year. And yeah, just pray she continues to rest in peace, and her family is okay. But yeah, just thank you to everyone. Thanks for such an adventure. I hope with this podcast episode and with the article, the companion article, I hope everyone has got to see this journey over a few years. But maybe the last thing I'll say will be, what's next? Okay, so for me, after doing that experience, I've always then started thinking about travel and what I can do for travel, for Africa, for Africans. And obviously, since I had that experience, I've had other experiences, done road trip to Ghana from Lagos. I did my charity climb to Kilimanjaro to raise money, and safari in Tanzania. So it was like, what next? And for me, what next was, with a friend, I started a community for Africans, especially Africans in diaspora like me, who are living outside Africa, called CODXP, which is like an abbreviation for Cody Experience. And the idea is to just create a community through a newsletter and a podcast and a mailing list where we just find interesting things for Africans in diaspora to be able to follow up with what's going on in home, and places to travel to, and inspiration and travel tips. So yeah, that is something I'm excited to get involved in. I recently wrote an article for them for my climb for Kilimanjaro. And yeah, that will be my vehicle to express my interest in traveling in Africa. And hopefully one day we'll be able to create solutions that would make traveling to Africa easier and better. And yeah, that is basically it. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode to just learn of my adventure from 2016 to about 2020 in aviation, in entrepreneurship in Africa, my personal story. And I hope that it's inspired you. So beyond just listening to the stories, inspired you to learn more, to do that project you want to do, and to travel and explore Africa. And yeah, that is it. Till next time, I'm your host, Emperonero. Keep going, keep calm, keep traveling, keep exploring Africa, keep doing that big project. And don't ever forget, the best is yet to come. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Emperonero out. Wakaribishwa Kilimanjaro, hakuna